There is a version of this story where Drake is remembered as one of the greatest to ever do it. That version isn't even wrong. But somewhere between the peak and right now, something broke. And the strangest part, the part that makes the story worth telling, is that nobody did this to him. Every major crack in his legacy was a decision he made. Every wound was self inflicted. Every move that was supposed to protect his image ended up being the thing that destroyed it. This is how Drake went from the undisputed king of hip hop to the punchline of the most watched NFL halftime show in history. If you weren't paying attention in the late 2000s, Drake's career sounds unreal. Born in Toronto in 1986, his parents divorced when he was 5 years old. Raised by his mom in Forest Hill, his dad was a drummer who had played with Jerry Lee Lewis, but wasn't consistently around. His mom was Jewish and worked as a teacher. That biracial, bicultural upbringing would follow Drake everywhere, in his music, in how people saw him, and eventually in how his enemies would weaponize it. At 15, he landed a role on Degrassi, The Next Generation. 145 episodes over 7 seasons, it paid the bills. But it was never the plan. He was recording music in his basement and uploading it to MySpace, handing over mixtapes to anyone in Toronto's hip hop scene who would listen. He made a mixtape called Room for Improvement in 2006 and Comeback Season in 2007, but nobody cared. But then, Lil Wayne heard one of his songs. Through a connection with Jazz Prince, Drake's music reached Wayne, who brought him into the I Am Music tour immediately. That cosign changed everything. In 2009, Drake dropped So Far Gone, a free mixtape that was supposed to stay underground and instead sparked one of the biggest bidding wars in rap history. He signed to Young Money, and by 2010, his debut album, Thank Me Later, opened at number 1 on the Billboard charts. What followed was a run that generally has no equal in modern hip hop. Take Care won Best Rap Album and still is considered one of the greatest records ever made. His album Fuse spent 13 weeks straight at number 1. Certified Lover Boy set the record for most top 10 singles from a single album. He wasn't just making hits, he was rewriting what hip hop could sound like. With his melodic flow, Drake pulled hip hop into the mainstream and made it feel natural. By the early 2020s, he had over 50 billion streams. By every metric, he was the most commercially successful rapper who ever lived. And then, the cracks started forming. The first real crack appeared in 2015, and it came from the most embarrassing place possible. Rapper Meek Mill and Drake had been friends for a while. Meek appeared on If You're Reading, This Is Too Late. They were allies. But then Meek got upset that Drake hadn't promoted his album and went to Twitter to announce publicly that Drake doesn't write his own raps, and that his verse on their collab was written by a guy named Quentin Miller. The truth was more complicated than Meek made it sound. Miller was credited as a songwriter. Drake's camp drew a line between collaborator and ghostwriter. But the public already formed their opinion. And when Funkmaster Flex played what appeared to be Miller's reference track on Hot 97, the story became about one thing: authenticity. Drake won the beef. Back to Back was so dominant that Meek's career took years to recover. But the ghostwriting question didn't die with the beef. It became a permanent subplot. Every time Drake stepped into a battle, someone brought it back. And that vulnerability, the suspicion that his pen wasn't entirely his own, would eventually be used against him with far more precision. 2018. The confrontation that exposed Drake's actual limit. Pusha T and Drake had been trading subtle shots for years. Drake escalated with Duppy Freestyle, directly calling out Pusha T and Kanye West. It was supposed to be the kill shot, but instead, Pusha came back 4 days later with the story of Adidon, and it was one of the most calculated, devastating diss tracks in the history of the genre. On that record, Pusha revealed that Drake had fathered a secret son, a boy named Adonis, with a woman named Sophia Brousseau. He called Drake a deadbeat dad, he put a photo of Drake in blackface on the cover, he went after Drake's mom, his absent father, and his producers for the illnesses. And then he sat back and waited. Drake never responded. He confirmed Adonis a month later through his album Scorpion. But that silence told a story louder than any diss track could. It said there were places Drake wouldn't go, lines he couldn't cross. Beneath all the bravado, there was something reachable, and Pusha found it. Then there were things that had nothing to do with rap at all. In 2018, Millie Bobby Brown, the Stranger Things actress, who was 14 at the time, casually mentioned on the Emmys red carpet that she and the then 31-year-old Drake texted constantly. He gave her advice about boys, and she'd been seen with him on tour. The public reaction was immediate discomfort. Drake addressed it 5 years later on his 2023 album, dismissing critics as weirdos. But bringing it up again didn't make it go away. It reminded everyone of why it felt wrong in the first place, and it gave a future opponent a very specific piece of ammunition. None of these things were individually fatal. A beef you technically won, a secret son you eventually acknowledged, and a friendship you could explain away. But stacked together, they painted a picture of someone whose image had cracks, and whose instinct was always to deflect rather than own it. And in 2024, someone decided to stop poking at the cracks and swing a sledgehammer instead. If you're finding this interesting, hit subscribe. There's a lot more like this coming out. Now, here's where it all falls apart. Kendrick Lamar and Drake had been circling each other for over a decade. It started in 2013, with Kendrick's verse on Big Sean's Control, where he called out Drake by name and declared himself the best rapper alive. Drake left it off. They continued trading shots for years, maintaining just enough professional distance that nothing detonated. Then in October 2023, J. Cole appeared on a Drake song called First Person Shooter and referred to himself, Drake, and Kendrick as the big three of rap. Drake dropped some bars to diss Kendrick, and Kendrick didn't take it lightly. In March 2024, he hopped on a Future and Metro Boomin track called Like That as a surprise feature, and made it very clear with a 1 minute verse that he doesn't like Drake, and the whole Big Three narrative with the bar F the Big Three, brother, it's just Big Me. What followed over the next 16 days was arguably the most significant rap battle of this generation. Drake fired first, with push-ups, mocking Kendrick's height and questioning his legacy. Then he dropped Tailor-Made Freestyle, which used unauthorized AI-generated vocals of Tupac Shakur. Tupac's estate threatened legal action immediately, and Drake had to pull the track. Not the best start to the beef. Kendrick responded with Euphoria, 6 minutes of surgical dismantling, questioning Drake's identity as an artist, a person, and a black man. Then 616 in LA, which told Drake his own inner circle was feeding Kendrick information. Then Drake dropped Family Matters, which was meant to be Drake's nuke. But not even an hour later, he found out what the real nuke was when Kendrick dropped Meet the Grahams.
Family Matters dropped. And we like, oh shit, like that shit was crazy. Like what he said, somebody runs in and was like, yo, Kendrick dropped again. I was like, you lying. Hooked on my phone and it was Meet the Grahams. So I was like, as soon as I hear it, my face went like this to like this. Then eventually like,
Kendrick wrote an open letter addressed to Drake's family, including his son Adonis. He was laying out accusations that went well beyond anything a rap beef normally covers. And then, within 24 hours, the kill shot. Followed Drake everywhere. Certified PDF. That's what the entire cultural conversation boiled the song down to. And unlike a typical diss track that lives and dies inside the rap world, Not Like Us crossed over completely. It topped the charts, it became the best-selling rap song of 2024, and it won 5 Grammys. Song of the Year, Record of the Year, Best Rap Song, Best Rap Performance, and Best Music Video. Drake tried to answer with the hard part 6, denying everything, claiming he had fed Kendrick false information, but it landed almost nowhere. But Kendrick wasn't finished, and he brought out SZA and Serena Williams, 2 women connected to Drake's past, to stand beside him while the entire stadium chanted along. A reasonable person might have gone quiet after that, let the music eventually do the talking. But Drake instead decided that he would sue his own record label. In November 2024, his legal team filed a complaint accusing Universal Music Group and Spotify of artificially inflating streams for Not Like Us through bots. He claimed UMG gave Spotify reduced licensing rates in exchange for pushing the song directly to his own listeners. He alleged that Siri was redirecting searches for his albums to Kendrick's tracks. By January 2025, it escalated into a full defamation lawsuit against UMG, arguing they knowingly promoted a song that falsely branded him as a PDF. UMG's response was devastating. They called it no more than Drake's attempt to save face for his unsuccessful rap battle. In October 2025, the court agreed and dismissed the case entirely. The judge ruled that the lyrics were protected opinions. No reasonable listener would take a diss track as a statement of literal fact. Then his label put out a statement saying the lawsuit was a danger to all artists and their creative expression and never should have seen the light of day. The company that built hundreds of millions of dollars of Drake's music publicly said their own artist was wrong. Drake's team filed an appeal. It's still pending, but the damage was already done. Suing your label over a rap beef you lost isn't a power move. It's an admission that you couldn't handle it on the mic. So you tried to handle it in court, and the court said no. Meanwhile, separate lawsuits piled on. Allegations that Drake and Aiden Ross misled viewers during gambling live streams on the platform Stake, presenting sponsored bets as personal wagers. Another lawsuit alleged he received money from Stake in exchange for inflated streaming numbers. The legal walls were closing in from every direction. And yet, the numbers tell a different story. In February 2025, Drake dropped Some Sexy Songs For You with Party Next Door. It debuted at number 1 at the Billboard 200. He sold out 3 nights of London's Wireless Festival in minutes, the first ever artist to headline all 3 days, and he toured Europe through the fall. The IFPA named him the best-selling rapper of 2025, extending his streak to 11 consecutive years. He became the first artist in Spotify's history to reach 300 songs with over 100 million streams each, and the first rapper to cross 2 billion total Spotify streams in 2026. His ninth solo album, Iceman, has been teased through a series of cinematic livestream episodes, with Drake driving branded ice trucks through Toronto, cryptic Pinocchio imagery, and previews of new tracks with Central C, Yeet, and 21 Savage. It's widely believed that this album is gonna be Drake's comeback, his return to solo material after the Kendrick beef. The numbers say Drake is fine, maybe even thriving, but here's the thing about legacy. It's not built on streaming numbers. Here's what makes Drake's situation different from any other rapper who lost any beef. He didn't get outworked. He didn't fall off commercially. Nobody took his spot on the charts. What happened was quieter, and honestly worse. He lost the narrative. The story people tell about Aubrey Drake Graham shifted from the greatest of a generation to the guy who couldn't handle Kendrick Lamar. And even worse, getting the label of certified PDF. And every move he made after the loss, the lawsuits, the abuse, and the complaints only reinforced that new narrative. The ghostwriting allegations planted the seed. Pusha T proved the cracks were real. Kendrick turned those cracks into a demolition, and Drake, instead of letting the music answer, went to court and lost there too. He's still the most streamed rapper alive, he's still selling out arenas. And he's still, by every number that matters, at the top. But legacy isn't about numbers. Legacy is about how people remember you when the music stops. And right now, the defining image of Drake's career isn't a sold out stadium or a Billboard record. It's 133 million people watching someone else stand on a Super Bowl stage and call him a predator, while the crowd sang along and gave him 5 Grammys for it. But hey, Iceman might change that. Drake has reinvented himself before. But the question isn't whether he can make another hit. It's whether he can make people forget the sound of a banging beat chanting Certified Lover Boy, Certified PDF. Well, thank you for watching. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Until the next time, where we will talk about someone you might know. Till then, face up.